Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
The Lakers needed overtime to beat a depleted T-Wolves squad. Can LeBron and company win a playoff series? Also, the Hawks stunned the Heat, and we are nearing the Stanley Cup Playoffs. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
For most of the late game to kick off the play-in tournament in the NBA, it looked like the Minnesota Timberwolves were going to grab that 7 seed. But then, like they do and have most of the season, things fell apart at the end, and the Lakers stole one, a 108-102 win in overtime. It was not pretty. Andy Kamenetsky from Locked On Lakers joins me now. And Andy, this is a win. You're never going to apologize for a win. There is no pictures on the standings. That being said, this was a brutal game to watch. Are you more heartened with the fact that they pulled this out in the end, or more concerned with some of the things that led to them needing to do that at the end?
Well, for the time being, I'm going to be more heartened because I've got 3 days, or I guess, I've got like 6 days to worry about the other stuff. Like, I'm going to pace myself in terms of really worrying about what happens. I believe it's Sunday that they're playing. I can't even do math in my head for how many days that is. That game aged me. I was a young man before that thing began.
There was no white in the beard.
No. I mean, as I tweeted out after the game at Cam Brothers, like, the Lakers earned this game by definition of winning it, but the Timberwolves were, all things considered, the more impressive team. Like, if nothing else, they should feel there's no such thing as, moral victories, but they were, for a lot of this game, the better team until I think they fell apart more just because the issues that should have allowed the Lakers to take more of advantage in this game eventually started rearing their head. But no, the Lakers did not play well in this game at all.
Yeah, Anthony Edwards, 3 of 17 in this game, could not buy a shot, 0 of 9 from the three-point line. And it was ultimately LeBron James, Anthony Davis, and a little help from their friends. Dennis Schroeder was huge, that clutch 3 down the stretch. But there were also some uncharacteristic turnovers. LeBron James had a couple errant passes and questionable decisions where, for example, he didn't go at Karl Anthony Towns when he could have gotten the 6th foul on Towns. So what did you make of the key players for the Lakers in this game?
I don't know. I mean, as far as the Lakers had Karl Anthony Towns in foul trouble for a lot of this game, and Karl Anthony Towns with no Rudy Gobert, no Naz Reid, and no Jaden McDaniels, he's basically their front line. I guess him and Kyle Anderson. But when it comes to like big guys on this team, that represent rim protection, anything along those lines at all, he's basically it. Karl Anthony Towns did more to get himself into foul trouble than the Lakers actually did to force it.
Yeah.
And LeBron in particular had down the stretch several possessions where he's either isolated against Karl Anthony Towns, or I remember there was a play late in the fourth quarter where he I don't remember who was defending him, but he broke the guy's ankles. He's about maybe 10 feet from the basket, and the only person who possibly could have challenged it was Towns, and LeBron opted for a baby jumper off glass, missed it. I'm like, what are we doing here? Like, unless, I don't know if LeBron and Karl Anthony Towns had like a gentleman's agreement reached before the game not to foul each other out, like, because LeBron was sitting on 5 fouls, so maybe he's wondering, like, I can't go back on my word. But the Lakers, I thought, did not do nearly a good enough job trying to milk potential advantages. I wonder if they got thrown a bit in the beginning of this game because they were attacking a lot at the rim and they were missing a lot around the rim, which is uncharacteristic for them. And it was coming at a time where Minnesota could not miss from outside. And I wonder if it led to a sense of feeling on their heels.
Stay up to date on the Los Angeles Lakers by subscribing to Locked On Sports today and Locked On Lakers on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. Thanks for making Locked On Sports today your first listen. Coming up, the Hawks surprised the Heat and are moving on. Before we get to that, the Boston Bruins officially had the best regular season in NHL history after what they did Tuesday night. We're ready for the NBA playoffs, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. That's because right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000. That's up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up today to claim your no-sweat first bet. Then you can wager on everything from the money line to point spreads to which team will be winning the NBA championship. You can also take a look at the two play-in games tonight. FanDuel has the Raptors 5.5-point favorites over the Bulls, while the Zionless Pelicans are 5.5-point favorites over the Oklahoma City Thunder. All that on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. So don't miss your shot at a no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 when you join FanDuel today. Just go to FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. Make every moment more with FanDuel. So we all know how ExpressVPN protects your privacy and security online, right? But there's something you might not know. You can use ExpressVPN to unlock movies and shows that are only available in other countries. If you're like me, you run out of things to watch on Netflix. This will change your world. This whole week, you could be binging The Office on UK Netflix. It's so simple to do. Just fire up the ExpressVPN app, change your location to the UK, refresh Netflix, and that's it. ExpressVPN lets you control where you want sites to think you're located. You can choose from almost 100 countries. So just imagine all the Netflix libraries you can get through. Love Korean dramas? Use ExpressVPN to watch Parasite on Netflix in South Korea. But it's not just Netflix. ExpressVPN works with any streaming service. Hulu, BBC, iPlayer, YouTube, you name it. There are hundreds of VPNs out there, but the reason I love ExpressVPN to watch shows is because it's so fast. There's never any buffering or lag. I don't even notice that it's on. Stream HD, no problem. And it works on all of your devices, phones, media consoles, smart TVs, and more. So you can watch what you want on the big screen or on the go. So if you want to access hundreds of new shows, go to expressvpn.com/lockedon right now to get an extra 3 months of ExpressVPN for free. That's expressvpn.com/locked, expressvpn.com/locked to learn more. The Boston Bruins continue their dominance of the NHL this year as they set the all-time record with 133 points for this season.
The Boston Bruins have made even more history here on Tuesday night thanks to a win over the Washington Capitals. This is Ian McLaren, host of Locked On Boston Bruins, and with their 64th win of the season, the Boston Bruins have earned 133 points, setting a single season all-time record across the NHL. If there is reason for concern after this one, it was Linus Ullmark leaving prematurely. He did earn his 40th win of the season, but he left with about 9 minutes left, hopefully just due to precautionary reasons. Jeremy Swayman came in and stopped all 6 shots that he faced. Brad Marchand with a strong effort as well, which we love to see, and the Bruins will now try to pad their stats even further in the regular season finale on Thursday in Montreal.
Another good thing for Boston sports fans, they just haven't had enough success. You're never going to believe this. The guy constantly in trade rumors did not show up to OTAs. DeAndre Hopkins was not present at the first day of offseason workouts for the Arizona Cardinals. When asked whether he expects Hopkins to join the Cardinals at any point during the voluntary portion of the offseason, new coach Jonathan Gannon said, "We'll see." Nuke was working out 1,000 miles away at a gym in Houston while his current teammate gathered in the weight room at the Cardinals facility in Tempe. He's scheduled to have over $30 million count on the cap this season, which will be the highest on the team and has made him the center of trade speculation for weeks. Another day, another win. The Tampa Bay Rays are 2 wins away from tying the most wins without a loss to begin a season in Major League history.
The Tampa Bay Rays have yet to lose a game in 2023. Believe it or not, they are 11-0 to start the season. They beat the Boston Red Sox by a score of 7-2 tonight, thanks to a really solid pitching performance by ace Shane McClanahan, plus 4 home runs by the Rays ball club. Josh Lowe got 1, Brandon Lau got 1, Isaac Paredes got 1, and Yandy Diaz got 1. So if my math is correct, the Rays still lead all of baseball in homers, if you can believe it. Now, there was a little bit of troubling news with the team as Zach Eflin, the $40 million man acquired in free agency, has hit the injured list. So the Rays have called up Taj Bradley, the top pitching prospect in the organization, to see what he can do in Wednesday's game against the Red Sox. Should be an interesting showcase and debut.
The dozens and dozens of Rays fans came together to celebrate. Dallas Mavericks general manager Nico Harrison feels good about keeping Kyrie in Big D.
Yeah, we did exit interviews with all the players. We did Kyrie yesterday. Had a great conversation, and I think the things that he said along the way about how he feels here, how he feels appreciated, how he feels accepted and allowed to be himself. I think those are the things that he said kind of consistently, and that's what gives me the optimism that he wants to be here.
The Atlanta Hawks went into Miami and stole the 7th seed, a 116-105 win in the play-in. Trae Young had 25 points in this one. Clint Capella, 21 boards. Brad Rowland joins me now from Locked On Hawks. Brad, the Hawks, they will get the Boston Celtics. We will have plenty of time to break down that matchup. Really, my question is, why didn't we see this all season? But we'll save that for your show. I'm sure you will dive into that. What was it in this one that allowed the Hawks to get the win?
Yeah, your question is certainly the one that I'll be asking big picture about how this has not been there all year long. But look, this is if all I knew about this game is the Hawks were not going to shoot the ball well. They were 10 of 41 from 3. If I knew that, they're not drawing dead at that point, but them winning by 11 points with that shooting would have been a stunner to really anybody. I think the Hawks won on the margins in this game. Offensive rebounding, in particular, was probably the biggest thing, but points in the paint and really just kind of bludgeoning Miami. I mean, they had the big size advantage in this game, but they definitely maximized it. All their front court guys were just physical, and they held Jimmy Butler in check. That was a huge thing as well, and those little things added up to a win that was not expected necessarily. I'm not stunned by the result, but the way it happened was pretty surprising.
Yeah, you mentioned that 24% shooting from deep. The Heat also got 33 points from Kyle Lowry, which is like a minor miracle given the way that he has looked this season, and the Hawks were still able to win. So all of that pushing forward here in a matchup with the Boston Celtics, a team that has been one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the league all season. Where do you think the Hawks can find some advantages?
Yeah, it's obviously a difficult matchup. Miami, much more beatable. It's also a one-game, quote-unquote, series. Not quite the same as having to beat a team 4 times. And the Hawks have really struggled against Boston this year. They're 0-3 in the season series. And the talent advantage obviously goes to the Celtics. But if the Hawks play defense like they did tonight, it's not the same kind of challenge as Miami. Boston is much more dynamic. But if they are as attentive as they were tonight, and really, again, similarly using their physicality, this is a Hawks team now that for the first time in a long time has real depth and real size, and they're healthy. Knock on wood, they have no injuries, and they're playing with more sort of intensity, just using their athleticism, really, just force all the way around. So if they can do that against Boston, hopefully you cross your fingers that Boston has a couple of rough shooting nights and close the gap there, because if they shoot regular percentages, they probably win the series. But Atlanta does have a puncher's chance in a way that some might not, because they have real depth that's probably, in fact, in my mind, definitely over the head of a normal 7-8 seed. The Hawks are more talented than that. They were supposed to be better than this year. They haven't been. It's been frustrating, but when they put it all together, they're pretty good.
I think, too, the weird thing about this is Quinn Snyder comes in the middle of the season, and there's a little bit of a wild card factor there as well. But also, he has way more experience as a head coach in the playoffs than Joe Mazzulla, which is to say all of the experience, whereas Joe Mazzulla has zero experience as the head guy in a playoff series. How do you think that impacts this?
Yeah, I think it's a good point, and it showed up even tonight. I mean, not that Eric Spoelstra is not great, because he is, but Quinn Snyder is different than Nate McMillan, and I'm not trying to pile on Nate, but it's just a different dynamic. The Hawks are much more versatile. They're much more adaptable than they've been in previous years, and to your point, like Joe Mazzulla, this would be his first rodeo, and that you never really know how a guy's going to respond to that. Do I think that's going to change the entire series? Maybe not, but maybe in a game one, like maybe just not quite the same prepared level or whatever you want to say that. The Hawks might have a slight advantage. They've also played more recently. Boston might have some rust, having basically a week off. And that's the way that an underdog can kind of sneak up in a series, is to go out and win game one, steal that one on your home court, and to have that coaching potential advantage, because Snyder is much more proven than Mazzulla. That could be probably not a deciding factor, but certainly one that could swing in Atlanta's favor.
Stay up to date all year on the Atlanta Hawks by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Hawks on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, the upcoming Stanley Cup Playoffs are flush with storylines. We'll tell you what to watch for. Looking for a delicious snack but don't want all the sugar and calories? Then you need the best tasting protein bar ever built. You have to try it. If you're like me and you want to make healthier snack choices, but you don't want to compromise on taste, then Built Bar is the perfect thing. I had one today. I had one yesterday. I will have another one tomorrow, I am sure, because they taste amazing, covered in 100% real chocolate with flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream. But they still hit all the macros that you want from a protein bar: 130 calories, 4 grams of sugar, 17 grams of protein. And now you don't have to wait to get a box. For years, we've been talking about ordering at Built.com, which you can still do. But now you can go to Sam's Club, you can go to Walmart, and grab yourself a box. It's so easy. It's so simple. What are you waiting for? Go get yourself a box today. As the NBA playoffs get started, the NHL playoffs are about to get started, with teams still fighting for playoff positioning and players getting into historic status with some of their performances over the course of this season. Gil Martin from Locked On NHL joins me now. And Gil, there are a couple of these that I want to talk about, but we have to start with Connor McDavid getting to 150 points. This puts him in rarefied air. If he wasn't already, just narratively and from a fan perspective, now we get to put him in the history books. Put this in perspective for us.
Perspective? Well, I mean, this is like going back to the 1980s statistically. It hasn't happened yet this century. And, you know, to get 151 points with a couple of games left on his schedule is just head and shoulder. It would be like a quarterback throwing for 6,000 yards in a season, just that much better than what anybody else is doing in the league right now.
Why do you think we've gone so long? When there was, it seemed like in the 80s and 90s, we had some of these more historic performances. And now it seems like we've gone a long time between this. Is it a talent thing? Is it a league thing? What's going on here?
It's partially coaching. It's partially the cycle of offense being ahead, defense being ahead. You had the so-called dead puck era in the 90s and late 90s, early 2000s. And then they changed the rules to try to open things up. And there was sort of a give and take. And now I think offenses are starting to bounce back, and we're seeing more scoring across the league. But, I mean, right now, McDavid is 27 points better than any other player in the league. And the next player, by the way, is his teammate, Leon Draisaitl, with 124 points.
And speaking of points, Erik Karlsson became the first defenseman with 100 points since 1991-92 season, only the 6th all-time to do it. Again, we're talking about something that had not happened in 30 years. I guess I'll ask again, why?
Yeah, well, I mean, for Karlsson, it's unbelievable when you think about the fact that he plays on a team that is one of the worst by record in the entire league. So he's very much a one-man show going out there getting 100 points on, you know, the 30th best team out of 32 record-wise. And the last guy to do it was Brian Leetch. You got Paul Coffey, Bobby Orr. You're talking about some rarefied air. And, you know, I think, you know, the way the game evolved since the 80s when scoring was at its height, players got more sound positionally. Coaches started to strategize to slow down the offense. You had the neutral zone trap. And now, thankfully, they're getting away from some of that, and we're seeing some more offense pumped into the game. And I think it's better for the fans this way.
And speaking of the fans, there's a lot of excitement coming down the stretch here. A number of teams fighting for playoff positioning, fighting for their playoff lives. What are the storylines? What is the big storyline you have your eye on here the last few games?
Well, the wild card spots are the biggest ones. You have 4 teams still alive for 2 spots in the East: the Florida Panthers, New York Islanders, Pittsburgh Penguins, and hanging on by a thread right now, the Buffalo Sabres. Each team has, 1, 2, or in the Sabres case, 3 games left on the schedule. And then out west, you have the Winnipeg Jets and Nashville Predators still fighting for one last spot. And, it's good for the game and good for the fans when these things go down to the last game or 2 of the season. Certainly keeps everybody's interest. And the more meaningful games you have, the better it is.
And then we get one of the most fun things in sports, playoff hockey, which means we will be talking to you again very soon. Thanks, Gil.
Hey, thank you, Peter.
Stay up to date on the NHL all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On NHL on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts. The Miami Marlins were the only team in Major League history without a player who hit for the cycle. That is until Tuesday night. Luis Arraez doubled in the first, tripled in the 6th, and then homered in the 7th. He singled in the 8th to bring in the Marlins' final run of the night. The last Major League Baseball player to hit for the cycle was Nolan Arenado for the St. Louis Cardinals on July 1st of last year. Arraez could become just the 4th player to hit for the cycle twice in a season if he does it again. The last player to do that was Christian Yelich in 2018 when he did it twice against the same team, the Cincinnati Reds. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Now go find your favorite team's Locked On podcast and make them your second listen. Coming up tomorrow, we'll get you ready for all the drama in the association. So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on Sports Today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.